Hey guys, my name is Mitsumiyo, and today we've learned about some significant changes coming to Rainbow Six Siege that I think is going to catch a few people by surprise. And so first and foremost, probably the biggest update is that Maestro is no longer going to have access to his ACOG. Now I'm sure many Maestro mains are not going to be excited about this news because that's one of the main reasons why you would play as this character. He's 3 armor, he's meant to be an anchor. One of the most desirable aspects about playing as these anchor 3 armors is so that you have access to that attachment. But at the same time, I can also understand why Ubisoft is doing this. Maestro is incredible. He has access to arguably one of the best gadgets in the game. It can not only gather information, but also take out drones and other gadgets on the offensive side. But then he also has arguably one of the best weapons as well because he has access to an ACOG. And so to lessen his potency a little bit and make him at least a little less desirable, they're going to make it so that he doesn't have access to that attachment. Another change that I was not expecting whatsoever is that Echo is going to be getting a pretty big nerf in the form of Dokkaebi. Dokkaebi is now going to be his direct counter. Not only will she be able to call him like every other defender in the game, but she'll also be able to hack into his gadget if a defender drops a phone and she's able to make her way on over and use her specific gadgets. This is going to open up a lot more options and possibilities for offense to deal with Echo. If you're going for a plant, instead of just kind of accepting that he's going to be able to stun you a couple of times, you can just simply call. That way, if he wants to use his cameras, he's going to have to turn off his phone. That takes a couple of seconds, and in that brief couple of seconds, that's going to give you plenty of opportunity to actually get that objective down. This also means that if Dokkaebi is successfully able to hack into the defender's cameras, that she can use his not only to scout out the room to identify if it's clear, because usually the Echo device is going to be around the objective area, but on top of that, you can then know where it's located in the room and then take it out manually. The one thing I find funny and interesting about this, though, is that Ubisoft is essentially changing the dynamic between these two operators. Normally, Echo was the direct counter to Dokkaebi. Now, she only really has a counter in the form of mute, and that's about it. If you were always getting called or you didn't want to deal with Dokkaebi on defense, you would play as Echo. That is no longer going to be an option. And so I'm really curious to see if they're going to add any more counters to her in the future, like with a brand new operator or with an existing one to mix things up. What I do know is that not only will this be a really big buff to Dokkaebi, but this will hopefully reduce Echo's potency, especially in those late game situations. Now, one change that I'm sure many people are going to be happy about, especially if you're on console, is that they're reducing the recoil on Ella's Scorpion. For a long time now, I've heard that, especially on console, that this weapon is basically unusable because its recoil is so substantial. There's no way you're going to be able to line up shots reliably. And so what Ubisoft is doing is that for the first 16 shots, the recoil is going to be reduced. If you keep going after that, it's going to be like it is on the live build, which is pretty unmanageable. For the vast majority of players, though, this is going to be a significant improvement. Yes, it has a blazing fast RPM, so you're going to go through those 16 shots really quickly, but as long as you tap fire and just don't hold down the button, this will hopefully be a noticeable difference. I don't know if it's going to make her significantly more viable, but if you play on console or if you just like playing as Ella and you wanted her weapon to be a little bit more reliable and consistent, I'm crossing my fingers that this is the change that she needed. Now, one thing that many people probably saw coming, at least if you're paying attention, is that Jäger is finally getting nerfed. With the introduction of Wamai, we now have a direct comparison of another operator that can deal with nades. The hope was that with Wamai, that Jäger's pick rate would plummet. It was at like a 90% pick rate, which is ridiculous, and it's been at that point for a really long time now. From the sounds of it, Wamai didn't really have that much of an influence on his performance, and that's why they're going on in and making this change, and I have to agree. He has been incredibly potent on defense for basically forever, and it's probably the fact that his weapon just does a significant amount of damage. And so what they're doing is that they're now going to be dropping it down from doing 43 up close down to 38 per shot. And while that does sound like a significant amount, it's difficult to tell how this is going to impact him in the grand scheme of things. This will probably make him or require one extra round at a medium distance, but up close and personal, it's still going to require 3 rounds to drop someone. Maybe at those long ranges, we will also see a little bit of a reduction in his potency, but we're gonna have to wait and see. Now, one change that I'm really excited about, though, is that Nokk and Smoke's FMG is now going to do significantly more damage. They're bumping it up from 30 damage up close up to 34. That has the potential to be a pretty big game changer. That means that's a 3-shot in close encounter situations as long as they have 1 armor. Granted, if they have Rook or if they're a 2 armored operator or 3, then it's gonna take a couple extra shots, but that is now going to make her and Smoke, for the most part, significantly better. She really did need this buff. Her gadget sounds awesome on paper, and when it works, it's amazing, but because she doesn't have really a weapon to back it up, it just didn't have the stopping power, it didn't really matter in the vast majority of the situations because you just felt like you were throwing marshmallows at someone. The same story is pretty much true for Smoke as well. Many people didn't want to use this because his other options were just a lot more viable and versatile, and so I'm just crossing my fingers that this is going to make it a more appealing weapon just in general and finally make Nokk the character we all kind of thought that she was going to be at the very beginning. Ying is also another operator that is going to be getting a buff with this patch in the form of her Candela. Ubisoft is taking a couple of steps to try and make her gadget more reliable. The first one is that now when you throw it into a room and it goes behind a wall, it is now going to have a visible outline around it that is only visible to Ying. I'm assuming their justification for doing this is that a lot of times you have a hard time knowing exactly where it rolls because it has the ability to bounce off walls and kind of steer around things sometimes. You don't know where it's actually going to go off. And so when you jump into the room, assuming someone's going to be flashed, but because it didn't land or it rolled somewhere unexpectedly, it puts you in a pretty precarious situation. This will hopefully just give her a little bit more information that she can use. On top of that, though, they're also going to try to make the Candela more reliable. The way they're handling this is that the number of pellets in the Candela is going to increase from 7 up from 6. 1 is going to activate at floor level, 3 will activate at hip level, and then 3 at head level. This means that if you roll it into the side of the room, no matter where that player is, up or down, behind, or an object, it is now going to be much more likely to actually flash that player. And then finally, it sounds like the pellets are going to go off even faster at 0.3 seconds, down from 1 second or 2.5 seconds on deploy. And so once this thing starts to go off, it's going to flash everyone in that area. I gotta admit that while this is probably a necessary change because Ying, when you play as her, if you don't actually flash someone in the room, it can be incredibly frustrating. Having a gadget that is this unreliable, and let's be honest, it is something that Ubisoft wants to resolve. But at the same time, though, this sounds terrifying. Ying is not easy to use. She requires a lot of patience and a lot of practice, so I don't really foresee people just now all of a sudden gravitating towards her because she's probably still going to have that very high skill cap, but these quality of life improvements are definitely going to make her more potent, especially for those players that do know how to use her effectively. The final couple of changes that are coming with this update is that Finka's spear is seeing a damage increase from 38 up to 42, basically the complete opposite of Jäger. I know that I personally like this because I find this weapon to be completely underwhelming. Even with a damage increase though, I probably won't use it because I just don't like Finka. And then Blackbeard, when you aren't using his shield, his ADS time is going to be the same as basically every other weapon in the game, so that it's not going to make him as slow and clunky. And then finally, they're also going to be increasing the ADS times across the board of every single one of the weapons in the game ever so slightly. This change apparently went in during the Ember Rise DLC, and they're reverting that because they changed some animations here and there, and they're going to be slowing things down. Personally, I'm okay with this because I'm always on board with trying to slow down Rainbow Six Siege ever so slightly, trying to make it a bit more methodical. For the vast majority of players, you're probably not going to notice that much of a difference, but that is going to be in this patch. But yeah, guys, that has been it for today's short little update video. I hope you enjoyed. A lot of significant changes with this update. Some that I expected like Jäger, but then some came out of nowhere like that Echo and Dokkaebi dynamic, or even Maestro. And so let me know what you guys thought about this. Are you excited with the direction that Ubisoft is going with these changes? Are you a bit disappointed? Give me your guys' reasons why or why not down below. But yeah, guys, until next time, have a good one and take it easy.